and also on Facebook and LinkedIn and the other social media platforms. And it's great to have your company as always on this Monday. Thank you very much for joining us. I am looking around because I'm just checking that things are doing what they should be doing. Some great guests on the program today. Joining me in the studio or virtual studio, I have Linda Bazant and also Antonio Falco. Hello there, you two. How are you? Hope you're fine, fit and well.
Hi, Steve.
Listen, we live in interesting times, don't we? The way things are at the moment. We've just had the US elections, of course. That's been interesting. Donald Trump is not admitting to Biden winning at the moment. There's going to be legal ramifications going on. There's a lot of talk in the press as well at the moment that this could actually be a bad thing for the UK as opposed to a good thing with Biden coming in. There's mixed and different views. Let's kick off with that question first of all. We'll go to you, Antonio, first of all. What's your feelings about the supposed Biden win that we've got in the States? And do you think it's going to affect us and be good for us?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say, Steve, thank you for having me on the programme again. And hello, Linda. Be nice to get together in the studio one day. So your opening comment, we live in interesting times. I'm fed up with living in interesting times. I want to live in boring times. I want to go back to a bit of boringness. But to your central question, well, look, the American people make their choice, and that's we have to congratulate them, whoever that winner is. But from a business perspective, my immediate concern is how the Biden administration is going to see a business deal with the UK. What is the trade deal that they are now going to try and do with us? And I think that's something that should certainly be on the minds of most businesses in the UK, let alone all of us, because it's going to have a long-term effect. The next 4 years are going to be interesting times because we're coming out of Europe, and we've got to start putting deals together. And the USA is very, very important. You have to remember that the biggest single market we have is the USA. The biggest investor we have into the UK is the USA. And we, in turn, USA is our biggest external investment. So the USA is very, very critical. And I'm concerned about the sort of deal that they're going to be putting together for us.
What was your feeling about Trump and his presidency? I mean, were there moments of lunacy in that, and they were covering up maybe some common sense? For instance, I know that when we talked before, he's been very hard on China, and he's worked to actually, I mean, he sees China as a serious threat. He's done something about it. And I suppose before COVID came in, he was reducing the unemployment in the States.
Well, I think that... Let me stick to the policy bit of it with Trump rather than personality. For me, the one thing that Trump understood was the threat of China. And you've heard me say before, Steve, on a variety of different occasions, that I believe that we don't have to have a shooting war with China because they'll just wipe us out economically. And I think Trump understood the power and the strategy that China has in terms of their global ambitions. And you've only got to see what's happening in the South China Seas, where you've got 25% of the world's trade going to the South China Seas, and what the Chinese are doing in terms of building the atolls. Essentially, what they're building is a half a dozen land aircraft carriers. We have to all be concerned about that. And I think Trump saw that and understood that.
Linda, you lived in the States for a number of years. What's been your feeling to all of this at the moment? I mean, do you see this as a good thing, a bad thing, an indifferent thing? Do you think it's good what's happening at the moment stateside?
I think it will unite the states eventually. It's going to take a very long time of healing. However, I would agree with Antonio on China, but Biden has come out and said that one of the things that he will be concentrating on is China. So he's fully aware of exactly what the situation was. And I'm sure that Antonio will agree that way back in the past, Chris Patton was warning us about China even then. He kept giving the warnings and no one was paying attention. So from a point of view of raising the awareness of China and trying to do something about it, then yes, I understand what Trump was doing. And Steve, you and I have had conversations in the past about people putting together manufactured products and so on, getting the patents on them here, for China to get hold of them and turn them around within 24 hours and come up with something a lot cheaper, but exactly the same.
Is it a bit of a double-edged sword dealing with China, that you know, you've got the bad bits and you've got the good bits as well?
I think what we're going to have now is Biden has said that he wants to get everybody around the table from the West, but including Japan. And he wants to put us all together. So, because the world now has become regionalized, it's not as it was years ago, where it was lots of different countries. We've now joined into regions. So you've got the agreement between Canada and America and Mexico. You've got the European Union. You've got lots of regions now rather than countries. So a lot of the regions have got to get together and put forward proposals with regard to the way that we're going to handle China, because we've still got to deal with China, regardless of anything else that happens. But we've actually got to make sure that we dig something in the sand to say, right, here are the thresholds and here's what we want.
You know, some very interesting news has just come out that you maybe both, it's from BBC, is breaking at the moment. It says the first COVID virus vaccines can prevent more than 90% of people from getting COVID-19. A preliminary analysis shows the developers Pfizer and biotech describe it as a great day for science and humanity. I mean, that's going to make a big impact, is it, both on America and on here in the UK, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But what we have to remember is that those vaccines have actually got to be rolled out. They will be done in tranches. It's not going to happen immediately. So anybody that thinks that come January, everyone's going to be vaccinated, that isn't going to happen. But as long as we can vaccinate the key people, the vulnerable people initially, so that the virus has an opportunity to die off effectively, then we can get back to the business of doing business. And as Antonio said, get back to boring.
Get back to boring. Actually, they say Pfizer believes... Hang on a sec, Antonio. Pfizer believes it's going to be able to supply 50 million doses by the end of this year and around 1.3 billion by the end of 2021. So, and they are just one manufacturer of COVID vaccines at the moment. So that's really encouraging, isn't it, Antonio?
I'd like to understand the efficacy of the vaccine itself. I think everybody knows that in order to create a vaccine, it takes 5 to 10 years. How they've done it in 5 to 6 months, I think things that needs to be questioned, and that's what would worry me, Steve.
That's very interesting. You're skeptical. It says here it uses a completely experimental approach that involves injecting part of the virus genetic code in order to train the immune system. 2 doses are needed 3 weeks apart, and the pharmaceutical companies say people are protected a week after the second dose. Well, let's look, fingers crossed on that. Fingers crossed. Northern Ireland seems to be a really big issue when it comes to Biden coming into the States. Do you think we're going to get a bit of a kicking there, because Boris doesn't have or hasn't had a very good relationship with Biden in the past? In fact, he hasn't even spoken to him yet properly. What's your thoughts about that then, Antonio?
Well, I think the immediate concern is that Biden has not been a Brexit fan, unlike Trump. And so, you know, is he going to focus on the fact that he wants to make sure that, well, we've already said it anyway, there's not going to be a hard border. So my immediate concern is he's not been a Brexit fan. How is he going to, and again, it comes back to negotiating, what type of deal is he going to negotiate with the UK, and what influence is he going to have in terms of the Northern Irish border? I say that loosely. I think it's all up in the air, but I think Boris needs to very quickly have a conversation with Biden, and he needs to do that now whilst in the transition period, because already there are rumours of Biden going to be signing executive orders that are going to overturn some of the decisions that Trump has made. So already things are starting to happen. I think we need to jump in very, very quickly, because the end of the year for us, and therefore the Brexit negotiations are coming to a very speedy conclusion, that's how we want to term it. I think we need to have a conversation very quickly with the Biden administration as to how they view a deal with this sooner rather than later. Otherwise, it's going to be another issue, another hurdle that British business is going to have to try and contend with. And I think we're all sick to death of trying to figure out and second guess what on earth the government is doing and what these trade deals are going to look like, because that's what's going to destroy business: uncertainty.
Linda, what's your thoughts on that? Because I know you're doing a lot of work when it comes to transition, and you're talking to a lot of businesses, and you understand the processes that businesses need to do when they're importing and exporting. Do you see this as a big change, or do you see problems on the horizon here?
I think the problems on the horizon really are going to be the fact that businesses aren't ready from an administrative point of view come the 1st of January. I agree with what Antonio is saying about Northern Ireland, but I think one of the things that we have to remember is that in the same way that democracy has played out in America, democracy played out here too. We voted to leave the EU. It was a democracy decision. And our decision has to be respected just as much as the decision in the United States has to be respected. I also believe that Joe Biden has got an awful lot on his plate. And what's happening with us is just one of those things. So once he gets into office, he's got a lot to deal with. He's got China to deal with. He's got executive orders with regard to some of the laws that Trump passed that he wants to overturn, perhaps. He wants to sort out everything with the WTO. He wants to rejoin issues with regard to climate change and so on. So he's got an awful lot on his plate, but he does need to appreciate that as a democracy, we voted to leave the EU. But I think the Northern Ireland issue is something that we will resolve. I don't think it's going to be resolved by the 1st of January necessarily, but I think perhaps a long way towards it. And businesses are going to find it difficult from the 1st of January going forward. But our government have set up for imports, for example, a tranched introduction into import duties and VAT over the 6 months leading into 2021, which still an awful lot of businesses aren't aware of, that they can sign up for to gain the advantage there. But I think that businesses need to look at the fact that whether or not we have a free trade deal, there are still customs declarations that have to be done from the 1st of January 2021, whether there's a trade deal or not. And as I've said before, there's £50 million worth of training available from HMRC to cover businesses. So even if you have to pay for the training, you get the cost of that training back. You can also use that fund to employ new people for your export-import administration and for new IT systems that you may require.
It's very interesting you say all of that, because in many respects, Biden is in the same situation, or the US public are in the same situation as we are. Our vote to leave the EU was within a couple of percentage points of each other, and it's beginning to look that it's going to be exactly the same, the vote between Trump and Biden in the States. So, I mean, we've got now two split, divided nations, haven't we?
But even more reason then, whilst Linda's absolutely right, is Biden's going to have a huge amount on his plate. I think even more reason for us to be a little bit selfish, to call on the fact that we have a special relationship, to call on the fact that with the biggest, the US is our biggest single market. So that's important to them as it is to us. And actually be a little bit selfish as a government and go, no, actually, whilst you've got lots of things on your plate, can we please be at the front of the line? Please, Mr. Biden. So I think we have to be selfish because it's critical to our business. We have to look after ourselves. And as I probably talk about later on, what do you do as a business individually in these difficult times? You have to focus in on yourself. We as a country have to be a bit selfish.
Do you think that's right, Lynn?
I can see what you're saying, but also, business aside, we've got security issues. There's the COVID issues. So as with regard to UK and US relations, there is an awful lot there of synergy there on those issues. So I don't think that a business deal is going to be quite as difficult as we think it's going to be. But I do think, I understand from Antonio's point of view, we do need to get to the front of the queue.
You know, very interesting there, because we've got these kind of split opinions to a certain extent. Yes, we've got to get to the front of the queue by all means, but is interesting. I suppose, in a nutshell, where do you both see it? Where do you both call it then? Are we in a good place or a bad place? Antonio?
We're in the place that we're in. I think yeah, good or bad, we've got to make the best of it. I think we have to put aside, are we in a good or bad place? I think we have to just we've got to be tough, we've got to be focused, and we've got to be selfish and put ourselves at the front of the American agenda.
And what about you, Lynn?
I think it's very difficult, but I think we will come out of the other side. And of course, the other thing to remember today with regard to Northern Ireland is that the internal markets bill is going through the Lords even as we speak right now. I think the Lords are going to tear out the clauses with regard to Northern Ireland and send it back to the House to say we disagree with those and we think that you should take them out. And given the fact that Biden is now president, this might be an opportunity for our government to say to the House of Lords, okay, we understand and we will take them out, but remember, they don't have to, because this is not a finance bill.
So there we are. Listen, very interesting. So is there any final comments to make on the US elections that you'd like to say right now, or forever hold your peace? I mean, is there anything else you'd like to say? I mean, it was a very exciting night, but it's taken forever. Yes, Lynn?
I've got one other thing to say. The WTO, with regard to, you'd be aware of the issues with regard to tariffs between the EU and the US at the moment. The WTO came out on the side of the EU and agreed that they could put forward 4 billion euros worth of tariffs on the US with regard to the Boeing issue. So Biden's got to deal with that too, not just our Northern Ireland issue, but the tariffs with the EU as well.
So there's lots to be done out there at the moment as far as Biden is concerned. Really, really interesting. Listen, thank you very much. Stay where you are. More to talk about. Really what businesses can do to get through. Here we are in lockdown number 2. And okay, I gave that good news earlier on about the vaccine, but I'd like to have your opinions of what businesses can do. And are we just going to see the end of business as we know it here in the UK because of lockdown? Because a lot of people are saying, aren't they, that this is just a lockdown to get us to Christmas. Then after Christmas into the new year, if these vaccines don't work, there's going to be further lockdowns as well. And that could destroy all sorts of things. So thoughts on that in just a few moments' time here on this edition of Business Connections Live. Lovely to have your company. Steve Hyland with you here, and a very good afternoon. We are live. We're live on Periscope, LinkedIn, Facebook, on YouTube. If you have a question for our two panelists, please don't hesitate. Get on there onto the chat rooms and leave a message for us. I know there was a bit of a mix-up at the beginning. That's no problem. If you're with us right now, that's great. The programme will be repeated over this week so that you can leave your comments on the show as it's going on. All right, let's go back a couple of weeks. We had Graham Gowan on the show. It was a terrific show. We are looking at ongoing investment. If you didn't see the programme, I do suggest you check it out by going to our website at Business Connections Live. But for those of you that missed it, here's Graham.
My name's Graham Rowan. I'm chairman of the Beaufort Society. We're a private members club for sophisticated and high net worth investors. The key things I really want you to take away from this based on my own experience are, first, you have to take personal ownership of your financial future. Nobody out there puts you at the top of their agenda, including financial advisors, wealth managers, etc. The second thing you have to do is to use your business as a giant ATM machine to take cash out of that operational business and put it into investments at some level of the wealth pyramid. What do I mean by the wealth pyramid? That's a kind of a multi-layered structure where each of the assets in there does a different job for you, so that you have some that are protecting the purchasing power of your money, some that are giving you income, some that are giving you some diversification into other countries. And the next thing you have to do is wrap a protective financial fortress around that, which includes having the right kind of tax planning. I've talked about having a director's pension, a small self-administered scheme, as being a financial Ferrari and a little known secret in the investment world. So by all means, bring in other advisors, but you've got to be the orchestra leader. You've got to take money out the business, build your asset portfolio, and then that will give you long-term wealth today and on into your children's generation and their children's generation.
And my thanks to Graham Rowan, who joined us on the program a couple of weeks ago. And don't forget, if you'd like to be on the program, it's dead easy to do that. All you've got to do is give us an email, drop us an email to studio at businessconnectionslive.com. It's as easy and as straightforward that. Just show us your interest. Let us know. There's a small production fee, of course, as always, but do get in touch and then we can sort it out with you. Also, you can just pick the phone up and give us a call on 01784 256 777. Follow our stream of consciousness at BCL Business TV. You can also watch and leave comments on Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the other social media platforms, YouTube as well. But the best place to go for over 400 hours of great business advice is to go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. You're watching Business Connections Live. Some great guests on the program today. Hope you're enjoying today's show. I've got Linda Bazant and I've also got Antonio Falco. Linda is a transition coach and she goes out. She talks on transition, what we should be doing to get ready for, the end of transition, which is coming up at the beginning of next year. And Antonio, he goes into businesses. He is the trusted business advisor. He will go in there and he gives sound business advice to organizations and companies who are looking for it. And the trouble is we can't know everything. Listen, it's lovely to have the pair of you on the program. If there was one bit of advice that you would give to businesses at the moment, and I know that's a very, very broad question, but if there was one piece of advice that you could give to any business, what do you think it would be, Antonio?
To listen to Linda's advice, because she's actually quite right. And it was interesting how on LinkedIn, the comments just before the show went on air, I think Linda put a post up about the fact that there was help from the government on learning how to do the transition and what the documentation is going to be, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, for those businesses that are exporting a product or a service, there is government help. And as she's just reiterated, it's paid for government help to help companies get through the transition period. So I think they should listen to Linda's advice, because I think an awful lot of companies, as the comments on LinkedIn showed, were just not aware that help was available, and they weren't aware that the help was free. So my first piece of advice is listen to Linda.
So Linda, good endorsement there for you. And he's dead right. It seems that businesses don't seem to be aware that there is this money there. In fact, this is happening right across the board, that there is money there for training to be ready for the end of transition, particularly for imports and exports.
Yes, that's true. And not just for the training, but also to be able to hire the staff that you need, to put the computer systems in that you need for the paperwork that has to be put forward. So, for example, at the moment, when we trade with the EU, the paperwork is very simple and very straightforward. But from the 1st of January, it won't be. Free trade deal or no free trade deal. The free trade deal is about tariffs, not about documentation. So you need to make sure that your staff know how to complete the documentation. Case in point, when you are exporting goods, you have to put a commodity code on the paperwork to say what you're exporting. Well, because we've had the agreement with the EU that we've had for the past several years, we haven't had to worry too much about that. And people have just been putting the first commodity code that's available onto the paperwork and sending it off. So you would be surprised to know that in this country, if you were to tally up the number of people in this country that have been shipping stallions to the EU over the past 40 odd years that we actually don't have in the first place, because they've just put the first code on and sent it off. Now you have got to have the exact code before you send out, before you export your manufacturing and so on. Because the other thing that you're going to need in some cases, export licenses, safety and security declarations. Do you want to defer duty? If you do, there are certain hoops that you've got to jump through before you can do that. And you have got less than 2 months to do it in.
Is there any good bit to this at all, Linda, at all? Or, you know, on reflection, have we made a dreadful, dreadful mistake? I mean, what's your thoughts on that? The pair of you, in fact, what are your thoughts on that?
We've made the decision. There's no point looking back now. We have to go forward. We've made the decision, and we need to make sure that everybody understands what's happening. Because remember, although we've got an awful lot to do at this end, so have the EU. If they want to start exporting to us, there's an awful lot of paperwork that they've got to do now as well.
Do you think that's
for us to import it here?
Do you think that's dawned on the EU? Because we do seem to be one of the things always has been, I've always felt, is that the EU kind of dictates to us. It says to us, you know, this is the way it's going to be, like it or lump it. And right up even to the vote, that there were still these dictates coming out of there. And even still, listening to Barnier, when he is talking about the way negotiations are going, there never seems to be any let up on us being told. Is that just my impression, or is that an impression that the pair of you have been getting as well? Antonio?
Well, no, first of all, just to come back to Linda's point again, there's no point looking back. A decision's been made, and the smart thing to do is to grab a hold of that, of where we're going, and get yourself sorted out, and so there just isn't any point looking back. I think from the from Barnier and the EU's perspective, they are going to make it as difficult as possible, because they don't want to encourage other countries to think of it. And I'll tell you now, the likes of Italy, who've never been in love with Europe in the first place, I think they joined the EU because they thought that maybe somebody could run Italy better than they were running it themselves, and so they are very susceptible to leading the EU. And of course, they've got to give as many signals as they can to try and discourage other countries from even trying to have a referendum, let alone actually voting to leave, because that will be the end of the EU. Another country leaves and they've had it. The Danes have never been fans. You know, they had I think they've had 3 referendums to make sure that the Danish people vote the right way. But look, we've got to move forward, and we've got to protect our own businesses, our own industries, because it's all about jobs and income and money to pay for all the services that we now take for granted. And they're seeing creaking at the edges, and they'll continue to creak at the edges if we don't get our business strategy right. And so I want to see a government that's very strong and very focused and actually has a business strategy, because governments don't produce jobs, they don't start companies. The people do that, but the government creates an environment for business to happen. So we just need to get focused, and I'm with Linda. We've done it now, let's just move on.
Just get on with it and do with it. Lynn, you got anything to add to that?
I have, and with regard to creating the environment, despite the fact that our government is getting a bad press around Brexit at the moment, the one thing that it has done is, with regard to the awareness of customs declarations and so on, as far as UK businesses are concerned, we are way ahead of the EU informing their 27 countries how things are going to change around paperwork, around duties, around VAT and so on.
Really, is that a fact? We're ahead of them at the moment on this. We're ahead of the curve.
We're ahead of, because they are. I think that the 27 believe that the EU will just negotiate their way out of it, and it's something that they don't have to worry about. Well, actually, yes, it is. In the same way that we've got to do paperwork, so have they. So but our government has been a lot better in coming forward to explain exactly what that paperwork is going to be, how it's going to work, and as I said, putting forward the training fund.
When the pair of you go into businesses, what's the question that people are asking you? Because it sounds to me like that many of our businesses are completely unprepared for this, and really they've got no, they're just not looking forward at the moment. Do you think that's the general consensus of opinion, that they're just not prepared and they're kind of hoping it's just not going to happen, Antonio?
Well, the questions I always get asked are, how on earth are we going to find the next customer? And so behind all that is there are concerns for those companies that are importing or exporting, and a lot of them, like Lynn's right, they're not really prepared. It's complicated, and so again, if you're in a position where you're importing or exporting, get the help that you need. It's paid for, it's there, it's available. Get somebody like Linda in, and get it sorted. So, but fundamentally, my questions are always about, how do we become leaner, smarter, better, but always, where's the next set of customers coming from?
What about you, Lynn? Is it more reactive because they're asking you to do specific tasks, i.e., to look at what they need to be doing for their imports or exports? I mean, you're a lawyer at the end of the day, so you specialise in a whole range of different topics, everything from import, export, and also Brexit preparation as well. So what are you saying to businesses?
I'm asking them to look at their sales contracts because an awful lot of the businesses that I talk to are concerned about who's going to be paying for all of this, who's paying for the duty, the VAT, who's paying for the declarations, who's paying for the export licenses, because they haven't had to worry about that up until now. So I've actually had to talk to them about something called Incoterms. And Incoterms are something you build into your contract, which looks at the risk and the shipping and the delivery of the goods and who's paying for what. Well, at the moment, it's something you don't have to worry too much about with the EU, but from the 1st of January, you do. And some of the EU countries are coming to UK companies and saying, well, look, if you want to ship to us, you still can, but you've got to pay for everything right up to our door. And so you need to have a look at your contracts to see whether you've actually agreed to do that or not, because Incoterms, although they're not legal terms in the contract, you incorporate them into the contract to sort out risk, who's paying for the shipping, who's paying for import customs and so on, and who's delivering it to the door, and who's paying for all of that.
Are there insurances that can... Sorry about that, Antonio.
I'm going to say, and Linda, I think a huge amount of companies are just not ready for that. They've got to get somebody in to help them with that because they're running out of time. And so I come back to, people that are watching this, are going to watch this later, get the help in, get someone like Linda in to help you because you are running out of time. And come the 1st of January, when your delivery doesn't arrive at your door, that's going to cause you a huge amount of problems. And from a sales perspective, we're at the other end of it. If you don't get your delivery into your front door, which then has a knock-on effect to your own customer base, think of what's going to happen to your own customers who are going to be let down because of you, because of something you haven't done, because of something you haven't taken care of. You could be the potential where you lose a customer to somebody who might be ready or is ready, and then you're going to have a situation where you one, got to try and replace that customer, and two, if you're growing your business, you're going to try and find another. You've got a double problem now. So move quickly. Get someone like Linda in to help you.
Very interesting indeed. Okay, so that's where we're standing at the moment when it comes to the way businesses are looking at this. Let's talk about the elephant in the room at the moment then, shall we? COVID-19. Here we are, we're in lockdown number 2. I said earlier on, I alluded to the fact that, and I know when I've spoken to Linda, we both feel there's going to be another lockdown probably January, February time, unless, of course, this vaccine, if they can get enough, it does actually kick in and work. But we've got a lot of people who are anti-vaccine. They won't take it. Where do you think this is going to leave us as we go into Christmas this year when it comes to the state of the business, the state of the country? How are we going to be? Is there going to be any money out there, or are we on the road to ruin at the moment? Linda?
Well, I think that if there are going to be any further lockdowns, they'll be regional. If this vaccine is truly everything that they're saying it is, and remember, there are 20 different vaccines being developed throughout the world, not just this one. So we've got a lot to choose from. But the vaccines, if you add those to the things like dexamethasone, so that although it's not a cure for COVID, it alleviates some of the symptoms perhaps, and they're not quite so dangerous. But I think that we will come out of this, we'll go into Christmas, come out the other side. Hopefully by then, maybe there is a rollout of the vaccine already happening. If not, we will probably start to see by the end of January the numbers rising again. But I think there will be regional lockdowns, not national lockdowns. But having said that, with regard to business, when we came out of the last lockdown, businesses prepared so hard to allow their customers to come back with masks and hand sanitizers and so on, and the distancing in their own businesses. So, for example, in the studio, Steve, we've got all of the notices up. There's socially distancing all the way throughout the studio. There's seats you can sit on, seats you're not allowed to sit on, so you're not too close to somebody else. Businesses have bent over backwards to make sure that they are safe, and I think that the government need to recognise that.
Question to the pair of you then. Do you think that this is an overreaction? No, someone who does. Tim Coe, he says this lockdown is a huge overreaction that devastates businesses and slows down the economy. And for what? How many people do you know who have been seriously ill from this? Well, personally, within our family, we do know someone who has been seriously ill and couldn't breathe from it. We did have some clients in the studio during lockdown, and while they were in the studio, the executive producer of the program, who obeyed all isolation and distancing rules, had lost grandparents to it, not ill, dead. So it is having an impact out there. I do wonder, Tim, I can see what you're saying, but I do wonder that it's that attitude perhaps maybe that is allowing it to still be in our community. What's your thoughts, Antonia?
But Steve, the trouble is that you can't believe what the government's telling you. Last Saturday, when Boris Johnson was forced to make a statement on television, which we waited for from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock to 6:30, because they're clearly running around as headless chickens trying to figure out what on earth to tell us. They then put up a load of graphs that within 24 hours were completely dismissed, and they had to come out on Monday morning and go, actually, we got those graphs weren't right. So it's trust and confidence in what we're being told. And then the Prime Minister himself in the House of Commons on Monday said, actually, the R rate is just about over 1. Well, the way they were talking, it was like it was going to be 2, 2.4, 2.5. So the trouble we have is when you hear comments like from Tim and an awful lot of people, it's because we're losing faith in what the government is telling us. And I think that the fundamental problem isn't that the virus is spreading. It is spreading, but the trouble is within the NHS itself. They have got around about 60,000 people who are off isolating or ill themselves. So can they cope with the influx of people? I think that's a part of the conversation that hasn't been alluded to or discussed. It's the NHS themselves that are now suffering in terms of their own ability to look after people because their own staff are down with this, and that's an element that I think is so. The whole thing is a complete mishmash, and people.
Yeah, but we can't close our eyes to what's happening across Europe, and we can't close our eyes to what's happening in America at the moment and the number of deaths that are going on. I mean, you can't ignore those numbers, surely, can you?
No, we can't. But what we have to do is we have to give people confidence. The government has to give people confidence that the information they put out to us is accurate. I mean, how can it be that within 24 hours they had to backtrack on their own information to us? I mean, it's.
I must admit that their communication skills are next to zero. They are awful, but if there is a message there that they're having issues getting out and they're telling the story badly, then that's the problem, not the fact that, the other part of the problem is the fact that people are dying from it and they're not communicating that in a coherent, proper way. They've got two problems on their hands.
No, their own data was wrong. They were proved their own data was wrong. That's the problem. The actual information was wrong. They had to backtrack. So this is the problem. This is why businesses are losing confidence, because they're having to backtrack on their own information.
Like to join in the argument, Linda? What do you think?
With regard to the figures that they're releasing, I would like to see the figures of the number of people that have recovered from COVID and what their conditions are, because we're talking about long COVID and so on, but we never seem to get told the number of people that have got it, fine, but how many of those people have since recovered? I'd like to know that figure.
Because there is a thought, isn't there, within Business Connections Live, that there is a thought that I think I may have had it and you think you may have had it too, which is interesting. And, we may have had it mildly, but nevertheless, way back in February, which I suppose to us, and of course there's no way of proving that. There's no way of seeing that. I suppose you could go for a test and see if you have the appropriate antibodies. But I can see where Tim is coming from. I just wonder that what we're doing is, I don't feel we need to be confusing bad communication skills and techniques, and they are truly awful. The graphs they are putting up on screen are the worst graphs in the whole world. You cannot read them. They make no sense to Joe Public, and I don't understand what's the matter with them. But I just wonder if we're getting lost in the fact that the graphs aren't particularly accurate, and in fact the real problem is that there is a problem out there. We're not communicating it. I think Tim's come back. I've probably riled him now. I've made him annoyed. Let's see what Tim's saying. He says, maybe it's different here in Hampshire. Thank you very much. It's where the rich live, Tim. Thank you. I don't actually feel vulnerable or at risk from this. It's probably naive or unrealistic, but I'm saying this is based on the job the government have done. And I suppose that's what we're all saying. And with that, Tim, I think we all do agree with you. They have done a dreadful, dreadful job at communicating it. Linda, you look like you want to say something.
I do. Regardless of the way that we feel about it, we are locked down until the 2nd of December. We can debate it as much as we like, but we are locked down until the 2nd of December. And I think one of the other things as well is the government have got it wrong, yes, and the figures that they put out are appalling, but we are just as much responsible for the uprising figures, for the number of people that you have seen out shopping that won't wear a mask, they won't social distance, the number of parties that people were having. We have a responsibility ourselves to help towards getting these figures down. And my concern is that we'll come out of the lockdown on the 2nd of December, or maybe a couple of weeks later, and all of the people that were flying in the face of what we were being asked to do will do it all again.
Yeah. And I suppose that is a problem that we're going to all have. Anything to add to that, Antonio, before we have a moment's pause?
I think that's exactly right. And your own thoughts of Business Connections Live, as you said earlier on, was they put us in this lockdown situation so that we can have Christmas, and everybody's going to go nuts at Christmas, and come January, it's all over again. But it's interesting to see, though, Linda. I was sent a list the other day of the amount of businesses and business sectors that were allowed to be open. And by the time I finished reading the list, I thought, well, what on earth is the point? Because it seemed to me that virtually everything was open. The only ones that weren't open were the places you could socialise, which actually, as you pointed out earlier on, have done the most work to actually make sure that people are safe. I find that completely bizarre.
Yep. Got to agree with you on that one. Okay, you're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your program. I've got two fantastic guests with me today. I've got Antonio Falco. He's a star. I've also got Linda Bazant as well, who is doing a sterling job and sharing their views. If you've got a view on any of this, please don't hesitate to get on the chat rooms and let us know. Thank you very much, Tim, for getting involved. And thank you for all the likes that we're getting on LinkedIn and on YouTube for today's program. I mean, it is a tricky old situation. More from my two expert guests in just a few minutes' time. Let's go back a couple of weeks. Alistair Greener was on the program. He was talking about making business personal. Some good advice here.
I'm Alistair Greener. I run a training company called Present Yourself. I also talk about making business relationships personal. In other words, Take out the box ticking exercise and make those relationships mean something. I have a 5-step way of making sure that our relationships are more personal, more genuine, and are going to prove to be more valuable to us, not just personally, but also in business. Number 1, make sure that whenever you are having a business relationship, it is about the person you're having a relationship with. Don't create solutions for problems that don't exist. Listen to your customers, understand who they are, get underneath the veneer, get underneath that surface and really get to know them. And they will become your brand advocates because you have that relationship with them. Secondly, I always think it's important to go one step beyond. Don't just say it. Don't just say about putting the customer at the center of everything you do. Actually think about ways that you can do that. Try not to oversell and underdeliver. Make it the other way round. Have some nice surprises for your customers and your clients that they suddenly think, I wasn't expecting that follow-up call. I wasn't expecting those extra course notes that you've given me. Whatever it is for you, though, you can give extra value to your customers. That's a way to make yourself memorable and, more importantly, trusted. The next thing is communication. We are very, very busy today. We've got emails flying backwards and forwards. What we don't want to be doing is chasing up our clients. Well, guess what? Your clients don't want to be chasing you up. So always be proactive in your communications. Get ahead of the game. Look at the way they communicate with you. Are you reflecting that in the way that you communicate with them? Make sure that whatever communication you have is to the point, it deals with what you need it to be, and is doing something to extend that relationship. It's not a stock standard generic email. Remember I said, ban that word generic. We don't want it. We want to make sure that it's real and it's authentic. Then, talking about being real authentic, it's about getting personal. Be as personal as you can on it. But maybe I should review that, but be personal when you go onto social media, you go onto LinkedIn. Make sure you actually have a genuine interaction, that people realize that you have actually engaged with them properly. You're not just there whipping down through the list of everybody that you might think you want to say hello to that day. It's not about quantity, it's about quality of that communication. Then, of course, the final one is say thank you. Thank you for being my client. Thank you for helping me, and thank you for all the business that you're giving me. Simple little things. Once you've built up trust, once you've built up that relationship and your client knows you're thinking about them, just a handwritten note. Maybe it's a tray of cupcakes. Maybe it's a gift that means something personal to them. And we're not talking about spending a lot of money. It's the thoughtful thought that counts, as John Rulin would say. And if you do all of these things, and yes, will you do all of them? No, I don't do all of them, but I aim to try my best to do as many of them as I can. And that way I'm going to have business relationships that matter. They're going to be relationships that are going to recommend me. They're relationships that are going to become my brand advocates. And if I can do that, I don't have to spend so much money on marketing. I don't have to spend that much money on publicity, because all of my clients who I've been looking after will be helping me get more business. I hope it gets you more business, and just make sure you don't pay lip service to communication. You personalize the personalization process and make your business relationships personal, not a process.
Wow, some great advice there from Alistair Greener. Great show. If you get an opportunity, go onto our website at businessconnectionslive.com and you can check out the entire program. My eyes are all over the place today. I do apologize. Lots of buttons to press here to get this all working. Two great guests on the show today. I've got Linda Bazant. I've also got Antonio Falco. Antonio, Alistair brought up some very interesting comments there when it comes to personalizing the way that we deal with our clients. What's your thoughts on those?
I agree very much so. Whilst there has to be processes in your business, the way you deliver things you do them in a personal manner, because the word, as I said, is authenticity. I think we're all lacking the feeling of somebody being authentic and real with us. But don't misunderstand that as not having processes in your system. If you're a manufacturing company, if you're taking a piece of metal in from one end and producing a product the other end, there's a process for doing that. When it comes to sales and business development, there's a process for doing that. But that doesn't take away the authenticity, the personal touch, and the ability to deal with people on a one-to-one basis.
Linda, he talked about numbers as well. Do you think we live in a world of vanity by numbers? That's something that I say on a regular basis. What's your thoughts about that? Make it more personal, but it doesn't have to be a mass thank you. It can be an individual singular thank you or appreciation to an existing customer.
Individual appreciation to an individual customer. And I think the other thing that that businesses need to remember is that if the customer comes to them for one thing, it may be that you are able to offer them another service as well. So having performed the service they've asked you to do, you can go back and say, oh, by the way, we noticed this, or were you aware of that? That's something else that we can do for you, so that they feel that they can come to you for several things and not just the one item that they've come to you for, because they've appreciated the way that you've dealt with them, you've given them what they've needed, you've done follow-up, and you've just taken care of your customer.
We've talked a lot about... Oh, sorry, you were going to say, Antonio?
I just answered it. It's also a smart business thing to do, because, in my experience over the years of dealing with many companies and hundreds of salespeople, is that the mistake that a lot of salespeople make is that they are always looking for the next order, quite rightly, but they've got a raft of customers in front of them that they could be providing another product or service to, but they just don't go through the trouble of finding out what that could be. So Linda's absolutely right, because it's more expensive and more time consuming to find a new customer than it is to make more of the customers you've got in front of you.
All right, then, you two. Here's a question for you. We're coming to the end of the program, actually. Before I ask you to give your summary of what you've been talking about today, and there's a lot to get in there, actually, today. Where do you see the future taking us now? We'll come out of lockdown. We've already discussed what may be happening there. Where do you think we'll be this time next year?
Give it up predicting.
Who wants to go first? Linda, you go first, or
I'm happy to go first. Dusting ourselves down, brushing ourselves off, and getting on with it effectively. I think until we get past that milestone of the 1st of January and see exactly how everything is going to play out, I'm hoping that by the end of the year we will have a free trade agreement. I'm pretty certain that we will. But even with a free trade agreement, there are still going to be issues that we have to deal with. And we are a resilient country, and I firmly believe that we'll be able to grasp the nettle and get on with it. It's going to probably this time next year might be a little bit too early to see how far we've got to. But I think over the next 18 months, 2 years, that's the time to revisit.
And what about you, Antonio?
For the future, Linda's absolutely right. This country, over the decades and centuries, has proven to be resilient. Certainly, the business community has proven to be resilient. So I think we need to hold on to that. So whatever happens over the next, obviously a bit of a summary later, but it's keep resilient and keep focused on on the day in, the day out. Get the help to help you make the transition. As I've said about 4 times already, that's I think the best advice right now from the show. So yeah, I think the next 18 months are not going to be easy. So keep focused on the job in hand.
I feel I'm going to ask you to repeat all of that in just a few moments' time for your key takeaways. Just before we get to that, though, Steve Bridger has contacted us. The reindeer sends greetings. Good to see you all, my mate, Antonio. So, Steve Bridger, thank you. That is a kind of, is that an in-joke? I'm not quite certain, but very good. So he says hi to you, Antonio. But I think what's also nice about it is he says big love to you too, Linda. So, and a couple of kisses as well. So,
and to you, Steve.
So Steve Bridger, thank you very much indeed. I tell you what, it's been an absolutely fantastic program. It's the first time, if you're wondering what we use to do the show, we use a product called Ecamm. And this is their interview technique where you can bring people in using their browser. We're really, really impressed by it. It has its issues. You may have seen that at the beginning. But we think actually a fantastic piece of software. If you want to find out more about Ecamm and Ecamm Live, you can go to this link here, businessconnectionslive.com/Ecamm Live. If you go to that link, you can find out more about the software. Use that link if you don't mind, because it helps support this program as well. So that's businessconnectionslive.com/Ecamm Live. We'd really appreciate you doing that. And that is an affiliate link, and it just means we get a little bit of a kickback, and it helps us fund the program as well. So for that, thank you very much indeed. All right, then, the pair of you, it's those key takeaways. Hands up, who'd like to go first?
Go on, I'll go first.
All right, then. She said, well done, Linda. You're the winner. So please say who you're going to say everything now that Antonio wants to say. Please say who you are, where you're from. The airwaves, Lynn, are all yours.
I'm Linda Bazant. I'm a barrister and transition consultant, and I'm advising clients on how to get ready for the 1st of January 2021 when we finally leave the EU. I'm experiencing at the moment companies that are not ready for export and import customs declarations from the 1st of January. They're not aware of the new border operating model that has been released by the government to explain to you exactly what you need to do. You will need export licenses, safety and security declarations, rules of origin will be very important, sanctions if there are any, which you will have to abide by. You need to know what they are. You need to look at your agreements with regard to commodity codes that you're using to send manufacturing abroad. What are they? How do they work? You've got to get them right, because if you don't get them right, it's the trader's responsibility, not the shippers, not the freight forwarders. It's yours. And if you get it wrong, HMRC will come after you for the difference in the VAT and the duty. So you need to make sure that you've got everything correct. And the only way to do that is to start training now. And remember, there is a £50 million grant from HMRC, which will cover your training, which will cover employing people to do your exports and imports, and will also cover new IT systems if you need them. So look at training right now and make sure that you are ready for the 1st of January 2021.
Absolutely brilliant. So there you go. All you've got to do, Antonio, is follow that, who you are, where you're from, and just as half as good as that will be fine.
Okay, I'll try. I don't think I can be, but I'll try. Okay, so Antonio Falco, have a look at my profile on LinkedIn. There's a number there that you can call me on if you've got any issues to do with your business. But let me just jump on to what the program's been about, and let me go back to the very beginning. We started with the USA. So what I would say to everybody is, it is what it is. Whatever your thoughts are, USA is a strong ally of ours. They're an important market. For future reference, if you want to see a potential, what I think is going to be a potential US leader, who's somebody with integrity, very, very smart, and a lot of capability and credibility, have a look at a representative called Tulsi Gabbard. She's the representative for Hawaii, a very, very good person, hopefully a future leader. Implore your MP, if you are a business, to make sure that he pushes for a good trade deal with the USA. It's critical. Get Linda in to help you. Stop thinking about it. Stop trying to make the decision. Is get her in and help you, because you're running out of time and you've got to get yourself sorted out. Both of us see companies that are not ready. The money's there, the help is there. Stop procrastinating. Get paperwork sorted, or you will be in trouble and you will lose business. If you're happy to lose business, fine. I suspect most of you aren't, certainly not in these difficult times, and certainly not over the next 12, 18 months. Get the help in, it's there and the money's there. Fourth, we can't do anything about where we are. We are where we are. It's a horrible phrase. We are where we are. Stop listening to the naysayers. Stop reading the stuff on LinkedIn about woe is me. I put a post up the other day about it. Get back into your business. Focus on what you need to do. Get a simple plan of action together for the next 12 to 18 months. Do the activity. Don't worry too much about the results right now. Just get a plan together, act, and do the things that we've been saying on the program today.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for the pair of you. One last comment from Steve Bridger. He says he's still alive, making mischief. This is in answer to you, Lynn, and he's on his 5th book now. So, and the other books are very good as well. What's that?
I just say, look, if you're in lockdown and you want something to read, get onto Amazon, look up Steve's books. I've read a couple of fantastic authors. He's written a few novels off the back of his experience as a person a young person growing up in Singapore. Really fantastic stories.
They're very good, actually. I've got the book, one of the books myself. Actually, makes an interesting read. Listen, thank you, you two. Well, I've been looking at your book. I've been looking at your books all the way through this, and Antonio. The one that fascinates me is MI6. What's that all about?
Yeah, well, I can't tell you.
You'd have to kill me. So the news that's come in while the program's been on today, live, first COVID vaccine offers 90% protection, Pfizer analysts shows. Stock markets soar on vaccine hopes. Wales' 17-day firebreak lockdown has ended and new rules have come into force. New virus tests being trialled in Liverpool could be a major breakthrough, says the government. The US President-elect Joe Biden is to make tackling the pandemic his top priority following his win over Donald Trump. Meanwhile, some disabled people in the UK are struggling to obtain medicine and breathing equipment, research suggests. In the UK, 20,572 new cases were announced on Sunday, 156 further deaths. And the global number of confirmed cases passes 50 million, while 1.25 million people have died. So that's the news as it stands at the moment on this live program on Monday, the 9th of November at 3 minutes past 1. Listen, you two, thank you very much indeed for joining me on the program. Antonio, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the program. And it's all about image, isn't it? The shirt, the tie, the jacket in the background, the handkerchief in the top pocket. It's about image because a lot of people buy us on our image. That way we can actually show our skills. That's right, isn't it?
Well, a lot of people talk on the show here. You've had lots of guests talk about branding and marketing. This is my brand. This is who I am, and I set a standard, and this is it.
And the same applies to you, Linda. You were very, very insistent that we had the appropriate background on when you were doing the conference on Friday for Richmond events. You insisted that we use the same background as well today, your Transition Pro background. How important do you think branding is to you? I cannot believe it. When I was watching an event last week, that they were projecting the events as being very, very prestigious. And what you had were images of people in suits and looking very smart and businesslike. Yet the actual presentation, not the one you were on, but other presentations, actually people were in T-shirts. Do you think it's important for us to keep our personal brand at the foremost of our minds when we do stuff like this?
Yes, it's not just personal brand. It's about respecting your customer. Like Antonio, when I go and see my customers, I always wear a suit. When I do a Zoom when I'm training or if I'm talking to a customer, I always wear a suit because it's respect for the customer.
Very good. Final comment we're going to final comment now. We are definitely going, Tim Coe, Antonio Falco, never T-shirt and jeans, casual. So it's always a suit. So there we have it. Listen, on that bombshell, thank you very much indeed for joining us on today's program. We hope you've got a lot out of it. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you very much for all the interaction that we've had online till we do this all again next week. We do hope, as always, you take care of yourself. And from Linda, Antonio, and myself, Steve Allen, take care and we'll see you soon. From all of us here, bye for now. Bye-bye.
Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel.